For many people, this is the king.
Well, you ain't never gonna rather have you ain't no friend of mine.
But for a large swath of the black population in the US, the only thing he's the king of is cultural appropriation.
You ain't nothing but a...
Now, some would argue that because Elvis helped to popularize Black American music all around the world, he should be celebrated as something of a de facto cultural ambassador for Black music. In their eyes, what he did was appreciation, not appropriation. And even if it was appropriation, what's the big deal anyway? You can't own culture. But is it really that simple? Should culture be safeguarded and protected? When does appreciation become appropriation? I'm Dara Starr Tucker, and this is The Breakdown. Elvis's success opened the floodgates for a slew of artists who have gained popularity over the years performing music that was born out of the struggle, triumph, and creativity of Black Americans. Though Elvis Presley is the most famous person to be accused of cultural appropriation, he certainly isn't the only one.
Mommy, I'm coming.
He's not even the first. But what exactly is cultural appropriation, and why is it always seen as a negative thing? The Encyclopedia Britannica defines cultural appropriation this way: a member of a majority group profiting financially or socially from the culture of a minority group. Well, newsflash, that happens a whole lot. Sports teams being named after Native Americans, the rampant use of AAVE by any and everyone in online spaces.
Oh, Whoop the Whoop gonna be there like your favorite rapper, the big ass person.
And endless musical groups who have taken the affects and stylings of Black musicians without any real attempt to pay homage to where the music and style actually came from. But why is this referred to as appropriation and not as appreciation? Well, let's use language as an example. I learned the German language because I appreciated it. I acknowledge where it came from, who developed it, who spoke it first, and I look to native speakers to guide me in my usage of their language. I don't mind acknowledging that I'm a visitor to their culture, and I always will be. As an informal American dialect, African American vernacular English is barely recognized as anything other than Gen Z slang by the culture at large.
We now return to the thrilling conclusion of Gen Z Hospital.
Is Bestie gonna be okay? I'm so pressed right now, bro.
Don't be pressed. The doctor will be in shortly, bro. Dead ass.
It's co-opted, misused, and adopted by those seeking to gain social clout.
I did give me some legs, because I wanted a little bit of crunch with my feeling, you know what I'm saying? Okay, period.
And when that happens, its origins are often discounted as if it just rose up from the earth. The idea that it actually belongs to anyone is seen as almost laughable. African Americans who speak this way are often looked down upon, while white kids use it to increase their social media following and get record deals. When appreciation begins to take on an element of exploitation, it becomes appropriation. In other words, the person from that majority group now stands to gain something, either financially or through increased social cachet, by taking on mannerisms, language, symbols, customs, or styles that they picked up from a minority group. Does this require avarice or malice on the part of the person doing the appropriating? Well, not necessarily. Can the effect still be harmful to that minority group? Absolutely. Minority groups are often vilified or marginalized for the same behaviors that are praised once someone from the majority culture engages in them. Full lips and hips, dreadlocks, streetwear, not to mention hip hop, R&B, rock and roll, the blues. These were all seen as dangerous, low class, or objectionable until white kids started to latch onto them. History is filled with Black artists who have been shortchanged or overlooked altogether when white performers and executives figured out how to monetize Black art. So it's no wonder that minority groups would feel possessive about their culture. Many people feel that safeguarding it and protecting it from exploitation is necessary to ensure that members of that minority group are in the best position to reap the financial benefits of the popularity of that art. But it's not just about financial gain. It's also about safeguarding culture and traditions that can be very easily absorbed by the mainstream with no acknowledgement of where the art came from. And those two concepts are really at the heart of this discussion: acknowledgement and compensation. Black music's popularity in the mainstream has come at the expense of any substantive acknowledgement of the contribution that Black artists have made to the advancement of popular music. From syncopated rhythms to blue notes to dominant chord voicings, the very foundation of popular American music rests on the shoulders of Black innovators. But all too often they're seen as an afterthought, underpaid, underappreciated, and unacknowledged. Well, look at this shiny piece of gold I found on the ground while walking through Negro Town. Guess it belongs to me now. Now, obviously, style isn't something that can be copyrighted. You can't trademark swagger. No one's going to pay you royalties for drip. When mainstream culture starts to catch on to AAVE, musical styles, or clothing trends, historically, Black people have responded with startling consistency. we move on. We create something new, and that new thing often ends up being vilified until young white kids start doing it, and designers and record execs figure out a way to make it profitable, and the cycle continues. It's very telling that the idea of culture is so loosely regarded, particularly among younger people who may not even understand what it is. Think about it. If the only real representation of true culture that you see around you comes from the black and brown kids at your school, or the ones you see online or in the movies, you'd want to be a part of that, especially if the closest thing that you've had to culture is Walmart, mega churches, and Applebee's, and a society that tells you you're supposed to subdue and dominate everything around you. The reality is that the further white Americans move away from their cultures of origin, English, Scottish, Italian, Irish, the more they long for a sense of true culture beyond what American consumerism can provide. Since Black Americans were forcibly removed from our African cultures of origin centuries ago and were also cut off from mainstream culture in the US, we had to develop a unique cultural expression that can only be described as Black American culture. And the exploitation of that culture has been big business in the US since the days of minstrelsy. Since the ascent of the alleged king, there have been thousands of contenders to his throne. We can only hope that the conditions of their coronations would require them to both understand the history of the music they're choosing to reference and to shine a light on the pioneers that made their ascent possible in the first place.